In our scripture lesson this morning, Paul is in prison, and the church at Philippi, which he had founded, was concerned for him. And they sent one of their members, Epaphroditus, to visit Paul and to take to him a gift from the church. The church at Philippi had been founded in Europe by Paul in his second missionary journey. He felt a very special concern in connection to this church, but through his travels, through his imprisonment, he had lost touch with them. Paul was now pleased that they had sought him out to be reconnected with him, and he was pleased to be connected with the Philippians. So Paul writes to thank the church for their concern for him. And in that portion I have just read, Paul says, "At last they have renewed their concern for him." No doubt it was a matter of being out of sight and out of mind. They had the best of intentions, but we know how it is. We can all remember those times when we have thought to check on someone and somehow we have forgotten. So too apparently the Philippians. Paul goes on to say that he knew their intentions had been good, but that their opportunities had been lacking. He writes, "Indeed, you have been concerned, but you have had no opportunity to show it." Busyness. You know how it is. The best of intentions, but nothing brought us into contact. Not wanting them to be concerned, Paul seeks to relieve their potential embarrassment. He says, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances." In fact, he's confident that he can be content in any and all circumstances. He says, "I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." But he still says to them, "It was good of you to share my troubles. Even though I'm doing okay, it does make me feel good that you share in my lot in life." The story is told of a young girl who received a small sewing kit as a birthday gift from her grandmother. The mother of the little girl wanted to make sure that her daughter had written to her grandmother to say thank you. The little girl was rather reluctant to do that, but finally she did. She wrote, "Dear Grandma, thank you for the sewing kit. I always wanted one, but not very much." It just sounds a little bit like Paul, doesn't it? Have you ever noticed that at times the greatest gift we receive may be the one we don't particularly want? Often the importance of the gift is what it does or what it means to the gift giver. The gift Epaphroditus brought from Philippi was important to the people who gathered it, the people who sent it with Epaphroditus to Paul. You see, they needed to share. They needed to have a part in Paul's continuing work. And Paul recognized that as he writes, "It was good of you to share in my trouble." We don't know the value or the nature of the gift that was sent to Paul, but we can assume it was money. Perhaps the church treasurer sent a parchment scroll check. Epaphroditus made the journey, and he shared his time in doing so. The monetary or in-kind gifts, they all represented time. Time to earn, time to achieve abilities, and time to get to the treasure. We sometimes discount such gifts. Perhaps you have said something similar to my grandfather. At the age of 82, he was fond of saying yes to sharing time and talent through his church and through neighborhood organizations. He would say, "I have more time than money." Yet at 83, when he died, he still had some financial resources, but he had no more time. The sharing Paul speaks of represented the very essence of the being of the givers. Time is precious. There is never enough time. Paul's emphasis, you see, is on sharing. In 1946, my family moved from Chicago, Illinois to Warsaw, Illinois, a small, less than 2,000 resident rural community on the bank of the Mississippi River. My dad in those days was still in seminary, and each week Mother and the three boys would drive to Keokuk, Iowa, where he took the train to Chicago on Monday and returned on Friday evenings. Now that was quite a change for our metropolitan family, moving from a metropolitan area to a rural farming community. Now these people, I want to say, knew how to share. And a large part of their sharing was facilitated by the number Red 39. You see, screwed to the wall in my parents' first floor bedroom was a box. It was high up on the wall, especially for a 5-year-old, and I'd have to stand on a chair to reach it. It was dark oak in color. There were 2 bells that looked kind of like eyes at the top of the box. A piece of black bakelite was at the center of the box and kind of looked like a misshapen nose. At the bottom there was a small platform on which a pad to take notes was found. On the left side of the box, there was another bakelite piece attached by cord to the box. And on the right-hand side, there was a small metal crank with a walnut-covered wooden knob at the end. This was, of course, for some of us who have lived long enough to remember these things, the telephone. It was the old telephone. And the phone number at the Knudsen residence was Red 39. Now, some people had red numbers and other people had black numbers. The church was black 151. But at the Presbyterian Manse, 345 South 5th Street, where the water pipes and sewers froze in the winter and the furnace couldn't heat the uninsulated house, our number was Red 39. Now, it was more than a telephone as we would think of a telephone today, even in our day of cell phones and satellite phones and all the things that are there. Because you see, in reality, the telephone then was a communication center. For one would pick up the handset from the left side of the box, turn the crank on the right, lean forward to the mouthpiece, and we would hear, "Hello, how's everything with the pastor and his family?" It was Ethel, the operator. She lived on Main Street, a home with a picture window in her living room. The switchboard was in the middle of the window, and she would wave to everyone as they passed by. Ring her up, and she would say, "Good morning, good afternoon. Number, please." You tell her you wanted to speak to the Moggs or the Vandals, and she'd ring them up, and she'd make the connection. No matter if it was the Zieglers, Van Paplendams, the Izzards, the Jenks, no matter who it was, she was the connection.